I give props to Vijay Shekhar and also Muruga, the founder of matrimony.com. They all came together when we had this issue with Google, because this is literally about killing businesses. When you take away 30% of the revenue, in India, it's a tough sell. We have these, tech giants, or how they call it in the West, the big tech, trying to kind of take away the little freedom that we have in building our small businesses. And we want to kind of follow the footsteps of Koo and what we call high intent dating. And then there's obviously matrimony, where somebody is getting into, the subscribers are obviously tilting towards the male side.
Hello and welcome to Business Today. I have with me the founder of Aisle, the dating app, Abel Joseph. So Abel, if you can tell us about the journey so far with the app. How did you start the app?
July 2014 is when we launched Aisle as a closed, membership-only club. It was supposed to be like a singles club, and it was targeted towards urban India, the English-speaking Indian. And I think those were the people who were ready for what we call online dating. They had the etiquette and the understanding of how to kind of go about the interactions in the absence of, let's say, the elders or society and all of that. That's essentially how it all started.
Okay. And who are your investors, and do you have any more investment rounds lined up?
I think our main investors would be Conglo Ventures. They've participated in 2 rounds. There is Anas Rahman from Huron, India. We also have CIO Angel Network, who participated in our previous rounds. And we have some key angels like Anand Chandrasekharan. He's a prominent name. So these are, I think, some of the key names that I'm allowed to mention.
And what about revenue from the users? Are there in-app subscription? Is there an in-app subscription model that you guys have for revenue?
Yes, it's a subscription-based business. We were not always a subscription business, but today we are. And we kind of moved into it, seeing that it was normalized through Netflix and Spotify and so on and so forth. And yes, the way that it works is a user can buy a 1, 3, or a 6-month subscription.
So I think currently, there are a lot of other dating apps. I think there's Hinge, there's of course Tinder, the biggest one, and there is Bumble also. So what makes Aisle different from all these apps?
I think we're designed for Indians and Indians only. So to kind of compare Aisle with some of the Western counterparts, I think in the West, society is quite different. They don't have to kind of design for multiple ethnicities or religions and mother tongues, etc. And I think we're kind of uniquely diverse in India, and we want to kind of evaluate how we can kind of attend to, people from all parts of the country. And so Aisle is not just a face and a name. And I think that's what a casual dating app is, right? So when you launch an app and you can swipe left and right, that's because you don't really have that diversity. So all you need to know is the age of the person and what they look like, and then you can kind of start interacting. But when it comes to India, I think there are certain nuances that you kind of have in mind, because your family has their roots, and they might have expectations of their own. And if that was part of your subconscious, you would obviously look for somebody who can kind of fulfill those little criterias, if you can call it so. And I think Aisle has that.
Yes, so I think you must have followed what happened with Koo, right? And Twitter. So what is how do you see this? How do you see this going forward for Indian apps?
So look,
something that you're excited about?
Secretly, but I think internet should be open, and internet should be uncensored, and I think users should kind of make the choice of what they want to do with their bandwidth, and so for sure we can kind of take advantage of the kind of narratives that are thrown about, but I think Twitter is a great tool, Koo is a great tool, and I think they should definitely compete with each other for their audience. We do it as well. We compete with the best of the best in our space, for our users. And I think, of course, the India angle does bring in value. For Ku, it's the regional languages. Of course, they're going to have a lot more experience with it. And I think for us, it's the customization and the personalization for Indians. And we are going to kind of, talk about it in our marketing material. So yeah. But apart from that, I think we wouldn't be like pulling strings in any which way to kind of divert attention of the users and try and acquire them in any other way than just pure focused good marketing material.
So, but do you envision Indian apps founders coming on one platform and putting the point across?
Well, do you mean that Indian other entrepreneurs signing up on IEL and IEL?
I think founders such as you of IEL and founders such as Ku, I think Vijay Shekhar is also proactively, talking about how the apps should keep their data in India. So, are you guys is there a case for a platform where you guys can come together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we already need an association, and I think we have a couple, and I think we should be more involved in each other's day-to-day activities and how we can kind of go about that building that India infrastructure and that ecosystem. I mean, there's a reason why we call it the ecosystem, and I think it's only when we kind of come together and talk about it. And these discussions can be done in the open. And I give props to Vijay Shekhar and also Muruga, the founder of matrimony.com. They all came together when we had this issue with Google. And I think that issue is going to continue. So these are the things that I think has to be dealt with, on almost on an instant basis, because this is literally about killing businesses. When you take away 30% of the revenue, in India, it's a tough sell. We are still not profitable businesses. We're trying to get there, and here we are. We have these, tech giants, or how they call it in the West, the big tech, trying to kind of take away the little freedom that we have in building our small businesses. So that, I think, is obviously something that we need to kind of, get together and discuss. But when it comes to the user choosing the platform, that's something I think that the more decentralized it is, the better. And of course, if the laws require us to keep the data in India, and I think those are great steps to kind of protect the sovereignty of a nation. That is completely understood, and I think we would kind of encourage any such motion from the government.
So, talking about data, I mean, what standards do you follow in, protecting user data?
So all of our servers are in India, and all the data is stored there, and we hire ethical hackers every time we have a major release. And these are some of the best hackers in India. When I say in India, they are obviously on top of the white hat list, even on the Facebook, Google, name it. They've all found big like bugs, which were previously not discovered by the best of engineers. So that is kind of the practice that we have, and because majority of our audience is in India, it's easy for us to take the decision to have servers in India. And of course, if our NRI population kind of grows, then of course we kind of have to think about, should we have another server, let's say in the US? If we have a lot more users in Australia, do we think about that? Because there is a little bit of latency when it comes to, passing data from one country to another when the user is in a different country altogether. That's again a tech, sort of a debate. But when it comes to protecting the data of the users of a country, I think it's a no-brainer. We should keep all our data in India.
And about expansion within India, do you look at regional markets as something that you can grow in?
We hadn't, but we will. Starting now. And I think for the longest time, we've always thought that IEL is not a brand name that's pronounceable by more than half of the country. And it was literally focused on the English-speaking Indian. But I think going forward, we have plans to kind of personalize our efforts towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So that will be I think that will be kind of a new sort of a revolution, and we want to kind of follow the footsteps of Koo, Share, Chat, etc., where we're trying to build something for Bharat than for India. So we'll see how that goes.
And about the last year, dating apps in the times of pandemic. What were the interesting trends that you observed that you feel that users of such apps should know?
Sure, sure. I think dating apps save the day for the youth, especially the singles, who live in these one BHKs and PGs and whatnot. And I think the only way for them to socialize was dating apps. So interestingly, there were other innovations that kind of took off as well. One of them that I can think about is House Party. So House Party was downloaded by probably half my contact list, and then we paid attention to that trend, and I think that was kind of a passing sort of a phase where people wanted to have these spontaneous sort of interactions, but and which is exactly what happens in the offline world, because not everything is a scheduled interaction, and I think there is value to spontaneous interactions. So when you look at dating, we don't think dating is like one small little I don't think it can be defined in one line. So for instance, there is casual dating and what we call high intent dating, and then there's obviously matrimony where somebody is getting into an engagement, thinking about an arranged marriage.
What's a high intent dating? What's high intent dating? It's
It's
a new definition that I'm hearing.
Sure. Well, it's a term that we coined for the kind of industry that we are in. High intent dating is when a user has the intent to meet someone for a very specific reason, and that is to start a relationship. When it comes to casual dating, I think you need not have an intent, right? Like you can kind of just hang out on a Friday, that's fun. You can even hire for great people on casual dating apps. So I think that serves a different purpose than an app which is completely focused on romance.
And about subscription, if you could give us a sense of, are there more women subscribers? Are there more male subscribers? If you can throw some light on that.
The subscribers are obviously, tilting towards the male side. But I think when you look at it from a proportion standpoint, so let's say for every 10 men, we have 5 subscribers. I'm throwing vague numbers here. For every 5 women, we probably have, 2 subscribers. So the proportion is not very different. And I think the reason is that, we live in a country where I think 14% of our urban women are working. Whereas when you look at China, it's about 85% of the urban women that work. Now, as long as you can get working, people to start using your application, regardless of the gender, the paying proportion would be the same. Another analogy that I can probably, or parallel that we can draw, is probably PUBG. When it was around and it was getting played. So if, for instance, or if we had, for the sake of this conversation, let's make the assumption that 1% of the male users pay. I think even the 1% of female users also pay. So yeah, I think it's more of an economical issue than anything else.